In this video, I'm going to go through some common job interview questions that you have as a sports scientist. Firstly, you may be asked about your experience. This could be using a GPS unit, heart rate monitors, and it's really important that you get access to these throughout your degree. So if your university has this equipment, use it within the classroom, but also try and speak to your lab technician and get some more exposure to this equipment. Secondly, shadow with teams as well. So learn how you can use this equipment in a pressurized sport environment. And as well as its practical knowledge, it is really good if you understand the scientific background as well and the evidence to support the certain equipment that you're talking about. So I would read up on GPS units, heart rate monitors, whatever it is, find ways to learn more about the science behind them. Secondly, you might get asked a question in relation to monitoring fatigue. And my advice would be to get experience actually doing that. Don't wait until you finish your degree. Do it whilst you're doing your undergrad. Get yourself involved with a local team. It can be really basic data, that's fine, but anything's better than nothing. I also tried different methods as well. So one simple thing you could do is RPE, but think outside the box. Are there different areas of the literature that you've read, and you think, well, maybe I can use that within my local team? It's really good if you show that you're not a one-trick pony in your approach. You have different ways of how you would monitor fatigue. And also be aware of the science as well. You want to give a split answer of your practical experience of monitoring fatigue, but also what does the research say? What is the actual evidence to back up what you've been using? Another question in relation to sports science could be, how do you break down complex information to players or coaching staff? And again, I'd get experience. Find ways to break down data efficiently and find ways you can explain it to coaches and players at recreational level. Human beings are the same, whether they're professional teams or amateur teams. It's all about communication skills that you can practice. This may take time, and this is why it's best to do it at a recreational level where there's less pressure. If you make a few mistakes there, okay, you're still embarrassed about it, but it's not as pressurized as a professional team. So if you can sharpen your skills at a lower level, you'll feel more confident when you go into that professional area. And finally, you want to use that experience. If you've never done this throughout your degree and you go for an internship interview and you get asked about how you break down the complex information, if you haven't done it, you've got very little to talk about. And in these sort of questions where it's scenario based, it's very difficult if you don't have the experience. So it's really important that you get that. The next question is, how do you manage your time across different tasks? And sports scientists will have a lot to do. If you look at a job advert, you'll see plenty going on. There's all sorts of different roles, responsibilities you'll have. And it's very hard to understand all of this if you haven't done it. You can gain awareness by looking at adverts and listening to podcasts, but it sounds much better in an interview if you can actually justify that you've done it yourself, you've gained a feel for that role, you know about the pressures that come with a job, and you can give real life examples of how you overcame that pressure and did your job well. And finally, you could be asked a question about how you modify the training load for an injured athlete. Like strength and conditioning, you will be working with athletes that are injured. Injuries are not just for physiotherapists, you will play a part in that return to play. So I would gain experience in that at local teams. When someone's injured, keep monitoring them. Don't just say, well, they'll be at home for a few weeks, so I'll just leave them to it. Do use the time wisely with the injured athlete and get that experience. So when you work in professional sport, you'll have plenty of injured players to communicate with. And again, you want that mixture of science and practice. So do read the research. There are plenty of papers out there across different sports on return to play protocols. So to summarize, I would get yourself in at recreational level if you're an undergraduate student right now. Use some simple, cost-effective methods that you can within your means and your budget. There is certain equipment that if your university doesn't have it, you don't have it, that's where you've got to get yourself into a professional club and get your hands on that kit. And finally, read the research. So listen to podcasts, read the journal articles, read books, watch videos on YouTube, wherever you can find to enhance your learning, then go with it. Okay, so that was my short video on job interview questions for a sports scientist role. If you'd like to discuss more questions or have any questions in general about being a sports scientist, get in touch on usual platforms at Sports Science Hacks on Instagram and at CJ Thompson 90 on Twitter. Okay, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.